All right, Teresa, you're all set.
Are we live?
Always good to see you.
Yes, you are.
Because I don't see it on my other computer.
Hello, guys. We only said maybe here. Hi. Should they see? Oh, this one.
Okay. Rob, can people hear and see us?
Yep, you are live.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so
Hello.
much for joining. This is Teresa Fulton. I'm the vice chair of the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission and also coordinator of the Mutual Aid Tompkins Food Sharing Cabinets, which is where I met some of the unhoused community members and got involved in this topic. So I have just a very few, I think 5 or 6 slides to share with you, and then we're going to get right into stories of the unhoused community members. Okay, you can put comments or questions in the YouTube chat, and we'll try to address them or hold them off until the end of the meeting. Here we go. So, quick agenda for the meeting today. I'm going to talk a little bit about who did this work, how we got these stories of unhoused people. Briefly about the ongoing work that's going on for hopefully to alleviate homelessness and prevent it. My goals for this event. And then I'm going to share just 3 examples of unhoused community members that we did during our work. And then we have several panel speakers that will share their experience as well. So the groups involved, I'm on the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission I mentioned, and of course we're very interested in homelessness since housing is a human right. We started a series last year called Unmute Yourself, and we had one last fall, I think, that was on women's discrimination in healthcare, and you can see that on our website. And then we had long planned to have one on homelessness, but we met up with some people from the Alliance of Families for Justice and also the Friends of Alliance for Family of Justice that were also very interested in the topic of homelessness. So we decided to get together, and a few people from each group got together. Now we have an independent community group called the Housing Justice Collective that's working on homelessness and housing justice. What we realized first was that we needed to, before we could do anything, we had to get some stories from homeless people and find out what was going on, get their stories of how they became homeless, what could have prevented it. So that's why there was took us a while to get to this event. There's a lot of work ongoing in alleviating homelessness, and I'm not going to go over this all here because you can look at it another time. But specifically, you know, the county and the city are working to find someone to run a shelter. You know that we lost our the only shelter in the county closed recently, and the Code Blue, as they call it, shelter is just for the winter. So shortly, we are going to have no homeless shelter in this county, which is a serious crisis. They're planning to build one, but that won't be done for another year or 2. So they're trying to find hopefully a nonprofit that will help run a shelter until we can get a permanent one built. The city is thinking about funding a navigation center that will have services for unhoused people. Meanwhile, like showers, place to store things if they need to go to the doctor's appointment, possibly a kennel for dogs if they need to go to an appointment, things like that. So that planning is in progress. And also, they're looking into how to make conditions in the current homelessness camps better. So probably local people know that there's a section that's sanctioned where they're letting people live meanwhile where they're unhoused, but there's no water source, you know, there's no bathrooms and things like that. So they're looking into how to make conditions in the camps better while we try to figure out how to house people. So this is all ongoing. There's a lot of groups working on this topic. So this is not my goal for today. We're not going to try to solve homelessness today. But the inspiration for why I decided on this topic was these are all quotes, direct quotes from postings that were in Facebook, when there was an Ithaca Voice article on Code Blue, whenever there's articles about the homeless shelter. I was seeing a lot of these, and these are actually copy and pasted from articles and comments that I was seeing, and I just was really like shocked and upset. I mean, nasty, horrible comments that people clearly didn't have a lot of compassion and empathy, and they didn't understand the diversity of homeless people. They're all drug addicts. Just put them on a bus.
That was his.
And so this really bothered me. And not only is it just upsetting, especially being on a Human Rights Commission, but in a practical sense, we're not going to be able to get people to support taxpayer dollars going for shelter, going for services for people, if people don't have any compassion or empathy for people that are unhoused. So this was kind of my inspiration for this particular topic for the unmute yourself. So the reality is that unhoused people it's everybody, white, black, men, women, LGBTQ, young and old. And I'm going to give you some examples, people with jobs, families, veterans. It's everybody, and it can be anybody very easily. It's not just, a monolithic group of people. So that's what we were trying to show when we started talking to people and gathering stories about how people became unhoused and the diversity of people that are unhoused. And I see that you're having a bit of a time lag, so I'll slow down. So the causes, I'm sure many people here know a lot of the diverse causes of homelessness. Definitely in this county, the high cost of living is one of the main issues. Mental health issues, substance abuse, people are getting evicted and many times without a lot of warning to be able to, save up for a security deposit and things. Incarceration of a family member, especially if that family member is the breadwinner. And people getting out after incarceration, they come back and they're homeless. Medical issues. We heard a lot about DSS is the Department of Social Services. We heard a lot about how hard it is to deal with them. The paperwork, go back and get this letter and go back and get this. It's just people give up. It's very hard. And then, of course, fleeing domestic violence is a big one. The living wage was recently calculated in this county, and they calculated, a number of people calculated and came up with $25.35 an hour that would be required to be able to not be in poverty in this county. So you can imagine that that is nowhere, the minimum wage is nowhere near that. And so that's definitely one of the causes of so many homeless people here. So what did we do? When we formed the Housing Justice Collective, we decided that we need to hear directly from people that were unhoused. So we had a number, over a course of a couple months, I think, we had a number of small group discussions that we recorded with their permission, and we took notes. And it ended up in us having a folder of stories of people that shows how diverse they are and the many different things that have happened. So I'm going to share just 3 of those stories. And the unhoused people are very transient. I don't even know what happened to most of the people that we talked to. So I'm just telling you what they told us. The first one was a young Black lady that was a teacher. Let's see, I'm waiting for, there we go. She was a teacher in another district, and she was forced to move back to Ithaca due to a child custody issue. She couldn't find full-time work here. She said, the per hour rate was great, but she couldn't find, that they're cutting back a lot of teachers here. She couldn't find full-time work. and she had a child, so finding another job would have required childcare. She went through a number of apartments with horrific conditions, no water, no power. Finally, some friends let her use their house for a while, temporarily while they were away. And she started to apply to the Department of Social Services to try to get housing. She described what she had been through. They needed letters from her landlord, strangely saying that she didn't live there anymore. They found out that she had a mom in New York City. They wanted a letter from her mom. To verify the letter that they got from her mom, they called her mom, and her mom accidentally said that she had seen her brother while she was in the city too. So then they wanted a letter from the brother.
Oh, gosh.
And a letter from the friends
Oh.
that she had stayed with. It was just hard. And every time she went, she told us that the person would ask her if she had had a shower that day. I mean, clearly, trying to trick her into saying that she had stayed somewhere, and plus it seems possibly racism. So she was denied, she appealed, she finally was housed with her child. And she just, one thing that she wanted to emphasize to us was how hard it is to remember. They make you list at DSS all the places that you've been over the last couple of weeks. And when you've been moving around and in your car and with friends, it was really hard. She was housed, as far as I know, she and her child were housed. So another of the stories we heard was a young man that he had been in foster care when he was a child, raised by relatives. When he was 12, his mother regained custody of him, but she soon relapsed into addiction and became very abusive, both physically and verbally, telling him she wished he'd never been born. It was just awful. So he left when he was 17, and he bounced around on relatives' couches. He kept getting kicked out. He was a marijuana user, so people would kick him out. He was in temporary housing for a while, but he was addicted due to his marijuana use. And he was in the shelter for a while. He was on medication for a number of mental health issues, but it was hard to take them regularly, of course, when you're bouncing around. When he aged out of the juvenile system, you lose a lot of the resources that you have. And after that, his family just lost touch with him. And I don't know what happened. The third story I'll tell you about, and the last, it was an older lady. She was a 60-year-old female. She had actually worked at the homeless shelter years before, but she went through a period of alcoholism. She became homeless. She was at the shelter when she was hit by someone outside the shelter. And shoved to the ground, and she hit her head on concrete, which resulted in a couple days later actually having a stroke. So she was taken to the hospital. She lost uh, she was partly paralyzed, and she also, after that, had a lot of trouble with short-term memory loss and had to use a walker. So due to that, a lot of times they find motel rooms for people that are in the shelter if it's full. But due to her medical issues, she was not eligible to be moved into a motel room. And her family, she said, even though she'd been sober for 14 years, her family still did not trust her giving her money and things like letting her stay. She had a hard time with the short-term memory problems of following, DSS, you need to check in every week and get recertified for the shelter and all the letters and things that I mentioned. And it was just really hard. She couldn't remember when she was supposed to do this and that. She mentioned to us that trying to stay clean at the shelter is really hard since there's a lot of people there using right in front of you.
Yeah.
And as far as we know, she ended up back in rehab.
Hmm.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and turn my video on so that we can see the Rob, did I stop sharing?
Yes, you did. You're good.
Oh, it just takes a while to get the video back on. Okay. There's such a video. I'm going to introduce you next to Ms. Phoebe Brown, who is a city council person, is also the local contact for the Alliance of Families for Justice, which helps families of incarcerated members and incarcerated people, and also people that have been recently re-entering from incarceration. And she has her own story. Let's share it. Okay.
Hi, Phoebe.
Hi. Oh, it just takes a minute.
Hello, I'm Phoebe Brown, Central Regional Coordinator from Alliance of Families for Justice. One of my jobs, I wear a lot of, usually they say head wraps, I'll say I wear a lot of wigs. Yeah, I am really grateful to be a part of this Housing Justice Collective. I'm really proud and excited about the work that we've done to bring this to this point. However, I was asked to speak about my experience with homelessness. I moved to Ithaca 30-something years ago, and when I came, I was homeless. I came to Ithaca because I wanted to stop using drugs. However, I found some anyway. That's process. But I was homeless, and a friend of mine's invited me, so I had an opportunity to stay with her. And then that, you got to give people their space back. And I wound up in the shelter, which at that time, 30-something years ago, I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely something different because I wound up in a shelter one time in the city, and it was like a big auditorium, like a big room with beds next to each other, sounding like the cold place, what they call that? But now, what's that thing now?
Cold Blue, the warming
The cold-
station.
The warming station, the cold blue shelter, right, where, but coming here, what they had in place at the time, Red Cross was, yeah, I believe it was Red Cross
On Court Street.
on Court Street,
Mhm.
who was running it, and it was awesome. I mean, I can't say awesome, but it was a place where I felt really loved. They had a friendship center. They had, different houses that we stayed. They had a house where families stayed. So me and my family was able to stay on Cascadilla. However, I felt very taken care of. I got Section 8 immediately, almost after a month being in there. Found really decent housing, and all of this was happening with the individuals who worked there. And so when I watch today, I'm kind of saddened about what I see because it was very helpful for me. And to this day, I've been able to say clean 29 years, thanks to the shelter, thanks to a lot of different situations that are different today. But what I do know is the shame and guilt where you feel when you're in the shelter. It makes you, the part that I always kind of try to make people not feel is you feel like a failure. I don't know about others, but I sort of felt like a failure of winding up into a shelter. So that already was fortunate that I had individuals that worked in that system that allowed to help me not get caught up in feeling shame and guilt and help me understand. And these were just the people who worked for the shelter, who talked about, because I didn't understand it. What am I doing, me in this situation? But they allowed me to understand this happens. This happens. And so I always talk about, and I try to compare, but I know it's a whole different experience of what we had then and what we have now, right? And so I'm just grateful. But one thing I do know, and I know it's important for people returning from prison and jails, people returning to recovery, getting clean and things. Having decent housing and stable housing is very important. I always equate that to helping me be able to be clean as long as I've been clean and acquire some of the things that I have. But the most important part that I acquired was my family back, who always loved me unconditionally, but now they love me and respect me also. And so all of that is important. I don't know how important it is to this message, but the message from me is that, for one, I want to encourage people who work in this field, who are homeless themselves, that it can work out better for you, right? And that we're here for you and we're going to continue to be here for you, to help you get to a better place if that's what you need. Is there anything you wanted to add?
I did want, because you said something to me, about how it's being unhoused is different for Black people. They tend to handle it differently. And like, we don't even see them in the jungle. And you told me that they tend to be more couch surfing and things like that. And can you speak a little bit to that? Because I think it's important. How are we gonna find them if they're in someone's house, room in a Astoria? They must be hard to find and therefore hard to help.
They aren't hard to find. They feels like it's purposely. We've been talking many years and years about the difference with a lot of Black families is we allow our families to come stay with us. And that's not good for DSS and other situations because they automatically, if you have somewhere you can stay, like the young lady, the teacher told you about, that leaves you from allowed to get the services, right? But what I find a lot of times in our communities is we, contrary to what people say and believe, we take care of one another. We'll find a space in the house for you. And so, but sometimes what this does is it blocks the services for our people to get. So what I ask is for those of us who are allowing our families to stay with us, to couch with us, to be aware, because that's always a question that I always bring up, is being very aware of people who are Black and brown, because we don't wind up in the numbers of like the encampments and different things. So I don't know if I answered your question
You
properly.
did, and so now I'm just wondering, do they need to lie when they go to DSS and say they are not staying with someone? Or
Yes.
does it count against them that they're sleeping on someone's couch?
It counts
Yeah,
against them.
yeah,
sure does.
Because
yeah,
that's
because they
what-
want you to stay there if you can.
They want you to stay.
They don't want to
there.
take care
But
of
you
you.
can't stay there because it's somebody else's couch.
Exactly.
And they don't get that. They're gonna
Yeah,
push that person and
Yeah,
push
no,
that person
that's
to tell DSS, yes, this person can stay here, even if you can't.
Even if you can't. It's
Because
happened to
DSS
me.
pressures that person to say, oh yeah, that person can stay with me. No one, excuse my language, damn well, you don't have the space for that person.
Yeah. And they don't pay well enough for that.
No,
Mhm.
They want to give you nickels.
there's no funds for you to stay in
And
anybody's
then they want to
establishment.
monitor you. Right? So you have to be on there, calling back. So it's really not. So I think
it's
figuring
different
out,
than being down in the camp.
Yeah.
In a tent. It's
In a
just
tent.
different, yeah.
or in the shelter. So it's what we may have to do is create a base or where people can come who are couch surfing to let us know. But and see, the thing about lying to DSS, even though you need their services, when they find out,
gonna
you
catch
can get
up.
sanctioned.
You,
Yeah.
You get
they
sanctioned.
know if they do
They
things.
know every single thing about your every,
Yeah, and it's
person.
too small
and
with
if you don't
this,
tell them, they'll find out and then you're, yeah.
and then you lose it. So it's
All right, thank you. That was.
Oh, wow.
Exactly, yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
Oh.
No, no, no.
You said everything you need to say, Phoebe.
Yes.
I'm trying to have the people on camera that are talking, and I'm gonna ask,
Sorry.
Cassandra if
apologize.
she's ready to go next.
Yes.
And you'll be on camera, I think. Cass, are you all set to go next?
I'm sorry. Miss
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. So I've been homeless on and off a few times within the last 10 years. My first, I guess it wouldn't be like my first experience with homelessness. It would be my experience with housing through DSS. I got kicked out of my parents' house. I was in my early 20s. I was using drugs. And so I went to DSS for help, and they did provide housing for me. I was on the corner of State and Plain here in Ithaca, and I would remember being really excited. You know, I had my own space. I was like, this is a good time for me to get my life on track, without realizing the conditions and the other people that were in the same situation as I was. So I managed to stay clean for about a month. There were bed bugs, lack of power, lack of water, lack of clean water. And I personally didn't know how to navigate that at the time. So I just dealt with it until I got kicked out. And like Miss Phoebe brought up, I was couch surfing a lot. So I didn't want to go back to DSS for help after living there, because if that's what they're going to provide, then I'd rather sleep in a van or, sleep somewhere where I feel safe, where I feel like I have control over what bugs are around me, crawling all over me and stuff. So I ended up actually going to rehab, and before I went to rehab, I happened to fill out an application for a local sober housing, women's sober housing here in Ithaca, and I went to Magnolia House, and it was a really great program. They house women and children who are in recovery, well, women who are in recovery, and if they have young children, they can help with that transition, kids living with their mothers again and helping them throughout their recovery. And it was a really good program at the time. I felt really supported. And when I did end up relapsing, they held my apartment for me. They made sure I had everything I needed when I came home. And I'm not sure what has happened at that facility since then. I personally don't feel safe going there anymore. There are men living there now, which was against the rules then for safety reasons. And it just seems like the quality of life for people in those buildings has gone down significantly. There has been a lot of overdoses, a lot of deaths that has happened in those buildings since then. And it's a real bummer, because I thought that the program was run beautifully when I was there. So I would really like to see something change with those programs here locally. And more recently, about 2 years ago now, my partner and I were going through the process of being evicted. I had lived in that place for about 5 years, my partner 7, and water was coming through the roof. The apartment was in a really bad state, and ultimately what we had wanted to do was to purchase the house. But we ended up getting evicted, and right now we're currently in a position where we do have housing. We do have an apartment. We are getting some services from DSS, such as like food stamps, and I get Medicaid and things like that. But we are one paycheck away from not being able to pay rent here. And it's really hard locally to find affordable housing. This two-bedroom apartment I live in now is over $1,800 a month. And I had to move out from downtown just for my own mental sanity and for my own recovery. I felt like it was a better choice for me to move out of downtown. So I'm over in the Lansing area. And even outside of Ithaca, it's really hard to find affordable housing with good conditions, with landlords that will treat a tenant well. And with everything going on with the shelter now, like the conditions at the shelter, um, whenever I had to go there were never great. There always was one or two workers that really looked out for me, made sure I had what I needed. But overall, it's just a bad experience. Like Miss Phoebe was saying, you feel like a failure. You're like, I put myself here. And what am I going to do to get out of it if I don't have the support that I need? And luckily, I have been through the process of DSS a lot, so I know what's expected of me. But you have to be able to go in there, take half, if not all of your day, sitting there at DSS, waiting to be seen, making sure you have all the paperwork you need to get approved, that they lose half the time. So you have to come back multiple times. Your caseworkers don't really care about your immediate needs. And I understand that things have to be prioritized, but there also comes a point where if a person is sitting right in front of you there, telling you their needs, what they need to get through the month with food or shelter or healthcare, I don't understand all the red tape that we have to break through multiple times just for one thing to be fulfilled. But yeah, that's pretty much what I have. Unless you have questions, Teresa.
No, thank you. That was exactly what I was.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you. Yeah,
well,
thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it.
Hit on a lot of topics, like you definitely relatable.
I'm gonna ask Ines if he's ready to go next. Thank you, Cass.
I'm ready.
Are you gonna turn your camera on for us?
Yes.
Hey, Ernesty.
Hey guys, how's it going? I don't know what this behind me is. I didn't do it. I didn't put it there. But how's it going, everybody? My name is Anesti Sufai. I moved into Ithaca back in 2016 to end of 2016, beginning 2017. Um, and you know, I went through the homelessness. I slept right at the Island Health Fitness area there at the bridge, down at the wall at the jungle area, and we slept behind Walmart too. But I think the hardest part going through homelessness. I mean, yeah, it was the stress and everything else that comes with it. But I think when it comes to getting help in Tompkins County, I think it was the most horrific experience that I had to go through myself, because I've never had to go through, you know, the DSS and stuff like that. But for once, they like the previous speaker said, they require so many paperwork. Some of it you can obtain, others you can't. And because you can't obtain the documents that they need, then they'll hold that against you, and they'll drag you along, and they'll keep on asking questions, and you know uh, trick questions, and trying to use the wording within the DSS law to trick you. And when finally they did help us a little bit, they gave us, I think, a $400 allowance, and the only place we could rent from, which was from the paperwork that DSS gives you, it has landlords in there that you can call and see which one it will take you. So they send us at 488 Enfield Center Road East. That place was unlivable, is an understatement. There was no running water. It was unsanitary. There were roaches, bed bugs. There were spiders, broken windows, broken stairs. Forget about using the bathroom or the showers. They were not usable at all whatsoever. And it was all the way out in Enfield, which is only one bus goes there, and that bus has, I think, it goes there about 3 times a day, I do believe. So if your work started at a certain time in the morning, you wouldn't be able to get there in time because the bus wasn't there. If you wanted to the store, well, you would have to walk about a mile away, and a mile there and a mile back to go get water or to go get groceries or what have you. And I used to walk that regularly. So they put us in a predicament where there was no win. There was no way out. We were just stuck complying what DSS wanted us to comply with and maintain the roof over our head, even though, it was what it was. It was somewhere where we could sleep and it wasn't outside. So it was that. So DSS is, as far as I could tell, going through it and also helping a lot of folks throughout time going through the DSS process. They do have these picked landlords that they got on their lists, and I think 2 or 3 of them have been there for before I even had to experience it, and they're still there now. So they're still actively sending people to those scum landlords, to the landlords that don't care about maintaining the house. They just care about taking the money and yeah. So there's that aspect that DSS uses that does make it hard for people to get on their feet. And then another thing that they use is, as soon as you get a job, as soon as you start getting a couple dollars, and they do their little reevaluation or assessment, and most of the time they cut you right off, or they cut you down to a point that is not worth even keeping it, because by keeping it, you're going to have to go and tell them everything you do every day. So that was my experience with homelessness. I mean, we slept I slept at the jungle areas. I was blessed enough to not get caught up into addictions, um, alcohol or any other substance. But I know a lot of folks in Tompkins County that, are going through times that are so harsh and so hard on their mental health and their emotional health that they're at the point of breaking, of finishing. And actively right now I'm talking to a few folks that are already at that point, because every time they go and try, every time they go to DSS, that they DSS gives them the runaround from here to there to paperwork, and by the time they're all said and done, they end up sleeping on the street anyway because of one small teeny tiny detail that they missed, or paperwork that they couldn't obtain. So yeah, that was a little brief side of my story of experiencing homelessness in Ithaca.
I should mention to people that Unhoused now works with a lot of the homeless people, helping them DSS, giving them rides to places, helping them navigate things. So he's making a big difference in our community right now.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thanks, Ines. You ready?
Thank you, guys.
Sure, why not?
Okay, we have one more speaker here, 2 more. You go ahead, Troy.
I'm Troy.
Hey, Troy.
I moved here a year ago, away from Portland, to get away from the drugs and alcohol. I got away from the alcohol, but the drugs have been a different issue. I'm dealing with it. But like everybody's story is, you go to DSS, and my problem is carbs. DSS wants me to get a drug assessment. I have done this before in a different county. I mean, I don't know if it changes from county to county, but I went to CARS. I got a drug assessment for Tompkins County, and the counselor at CARS
I was
failed.
gonna say CARS is the Cuba Addiction
Yes,
Recovery Service,
yes.
but some people might not know.
And but she failed to fax the paperwork to DSS. So on a Friday night at 10:30 at night, I was housed at the Super 8 motel, and here come the people from the shelter when it was still open, telling me that I got to leave the hotel and I got to go back to the shelter this day. And I mean, anybody that's gone through what we're going through, the shelters was not a good place to stay. It's dirty, nasty, and I wouldn't stay there. So I moved to the jungle, and that's where I reside today. And I'm still having the same problem with DSS. They wanted me to do another drug assessment, and I'm like, you know what? I've gone to rehab twice for DSS. I've done their drug assessment. Why do I have to continue to keep on doing this? You know, it's just a lot of red tape.
Yeah.
And it's stupid. It's stupid. I mean, come on. I've been cleared by the doctors in Syracuse. I can't work because of health conditions. I've been cleared. They even cleared me on having to do the drug assessment. And they cleared me for 4 months, the doctor in Syracuse did. And these guys come at me 90 days later. My time wasn't even up yet. And they more or less took my housing away from me. I mean, I kind of helped it along myself a little bit, but I mean, I just assume stay in the jungle, man, where I'm free to do what I want when I want, and I'm comfortable and I feel safe. It's not as bad down there as people think it is. You know, there's a couple of horror stories here or there, but it's not what you think it is. For the most part, we all look out for one another down there, and that's what it's about, because we're all in the same boat. Some people, you know, prefer to stay down there. Now I'm just supposed to maybe building a place down there. I'd like to, but you know, I don't want to. But you know, it's like with the landlords, you know. I had an apartment lined up in Dryden over the pizza shop down there. I mean, it's a scum hole, but it's a place to live. And I was informed by my worker that I spoke to the landlord. He fax copied his paperwork to DSS for me. I signed my paperwork, and I was told by my worker that when they got the paperwork from the landlord, that one of them would meet with the landlord, make sure the apartment was okay, and get a key for me. And I never heard nothing ever again. So I lost my housing over that. And you know, when I said that to I mean, I've been on DSS now for almost a year. And in that year's time, I've had 4 different caseworkers. See, that's another problem. They'll shift you from one caseworker to another, to another, to another. I mean, they're doing it with a lot of us. And the reason why I don't have my housing now is the same thing with cars. I did the drug assessment, and what they wanted, DSS wanted an update with my assessment, a copy of it. I went and got them a copy. When I come back with that copy, they tell me, oh no, you got to do it again. I mean, what do you mean I got to do it again? I've done it. You know, why is it my fault that this lady didn't fax my paperwork to you guys? You know, I'm not supposed to take the word of a counselor that she'll do her job. I didn't know she was going to quit and leave there. And that's what she did. I was never, you know, I did their 3 sessions like they wanted to. I did their urine samples like they wanted to. And she did. I was told that by my counselor that she would meet with the other counselors to figure out a program for me as far as treatment goes. And I never heard nothing again. And I say, I know I'm on the street because of this. And it's just miscommunication between a lot of people. And it's the higher ups that are doing it. Because they don't care. They don't care. They don't care if I got a roof over my head or not.
Because they go home to a house.
Yeah, I mean, they wake up and I'm on their front porch somewhere, you know, don't know why. Am I happy? You know.
Thank you very much for being willing to share.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I add something real quick, Teresa?
Of
I
course.
want to speak what I'm saying, 'cause I'm trying to relate to
The only thing I wanted to add is that CARS is now the only place in Ithaca in Tompkins County where somebody can receive drug and alcohol services. There used to be another option, but now CARS is the only option that you can go to get all this paperwork.
Correct about that. There used to be 2 other places here, one on Triphammer Road and one downtown on Green Street, but they're both gone. They're just straight mental health now. They don't have nothing to do with drug and alcohol evaluation. And neither does Reach doesn't have nothing to do with it no more either. Everybody's just, they don't want to do it.
It's just the one
Just the one.
for the whole.
You can't even find a private.
Thank you. Thanks, Cassandra, for that question. I think we have one more.
Yep, it's cool. I'm Brianna Forrest. I put all my thing into like a little story. So I've been homeless since I was like probably 17, but I'm not even gonna talk about that because I've come from homelessness. I've been to prison, came home from prison in 2020. I got into a relationship. It was a domestic violence situation, and that's why I became homeless. So I've been homeless for over a year. I'm here on behalf of myself and my spouse, Jelani Ellison. I'm just gonna read this little quick thing for you guys. Yeah. So I'm just gonna read, Jelani and I never expected to find ourselves homeless in Ithaca, our own hometown, the place where our parents did prominent things in the community, a place where the gorgeous and college students paint a picture of prosperity that feel words away from our reality. Our struggle began when our housing situations became unstable, forcing us to navigate the harsh realities of homelessness in a college town where the cost of living soared as high as the surrounding hills. During the bitter Finger Lakes winter, we had found temporary refuge at the St. John's Community Shelter, which has since shut down. Living homeless for a year in Ithaca has really stripped away every shed of stability and dignity from our lives. Each day of our lives became a grueling marathon of basic survival with challenges that most people couldn't imagine. Hygiene has become a daily struggle, and finding places to shower a constant battle. The weather was and is merciless. Summer brought sweltering days with no escape from the heat, while winter means fighting to survive temperatures that drop below freezing. We are learning every heated public space in Ithaca, developing an internal map of places where we can warm up without being immediately kicked out. The brutal winter winds whipping through start to feel like knives against our skin as we walk miles between services. Department of Social Services became one of our biggest battlegrounds. What should have been a place of assistance turned into a source of constant frustration and humiliation. The paperwork seemed designed to break our spirit. We'd carefully gather all required documents only to be told we needed just one more thing, forcing us to make multiple trips. When we would ask questions about our application statuses, we were often met with cold, dismissive responses or told to be patient. Caseworkers seemed to change constantly, each one not knowing anything about the previous conversations or submissions. We'd have to retell our story repeatedly, reliving our trauma while facing skeptical looks and invasive questions. Some caseworkers would even speak to us condescendingly as if our homelessness was a personal failure rather than a circumstance. Another frustrating part was the endless cycle of emergency housing denials. We'd be told we didn't qualify, but the reasons kept changing. Sometimes it was insufficient documentation. Other times we were told we had exhausted all of our options. The goalposts seemed to move every time we got close. When we would attempt to advocate for ourselves or question decisions, we were labeled as difficult, uncooperative, even aggressive. The implicit threat was clear: push too hard and risk losing what little assistance was available. We had to watch our words carefully, swallowing our dignity to navigate a system that seemed designed to wear us down rather than lift us up. The back and forth with emergency housing was particularly devastating. We'd be placed in motels for short periods and abruptly told to leave with little notice. The instability made it nearly impossible to maintain employment or follow up on opportunities. Each step forward was met with 2 steps back. Transportation became another hurdle. DSS appointments were mandatory, but no consideration was given to how we would get there. Missing an appointment meant starting the process all over again. Yikes. The mental toll has become enormous. Hours spent waiting, being treated like numbers rather than people, and fighting for basic needs has left us exhausted and demoralized. Sleep deprivation has become our constant companion. Finding safe places to rest is nearly impossible. The psychological toll is devastating. We are faced with constant stress about where we are going to sleep each night, anxiety about our safety, depressions from social society rejection, as well as family loss, trauma from police sort of law enforcement convention, where there's been law enforcement agencies with numerous just things going on, not feeling safe. So I touched on like this thing where Jelani, I'm not even gonna touch on that. He had this altercation with an officer on call, whatever. I don't know. I kind of just spoke on like employment is seeming impossible. How do you want to get a job when you don't have a place to shower the night before, or you work all day? You work all day and you come home from work. You want to take a shower. You have nowhere to shower. Of course, the warming station has a place to sleep at night, but it's no shower.
Yeah.
You really,
And-
actually what you said was very representative.
And not only that, I mean, you gotta leave during the day. You gotta take all your stuff with you.
Right, so I just have one more thing just to say about DSS, because this is the thing with DSS. So the mere mention of DSS would cause landlords' faces to fall, or phone calls to suddenly end. The $360 per person monthly allowance from DSS is almost laughable in a city where even the most basic studio apartments start at $1,000 or more.
Mhm.
The stigma is immediate and harsh. We don't accept DSS. Has become a familiar refrain, often delivered with thinly veiled contempt. Some landlords wouldn't even let us view apartments once we mentioned DSS. Others would suddenly claim the unit was just rented or would ghost us after learning about our source of income, despite initially showing interest. The $720 combined allowance for both of us barely covers half of what most landlords are asking for rent. In Ithaca's inflated housing market, dominated by college student rentals and luxury apartments, the amount is woefully inadequate. When we did find landlords willing to consider DSS, we almost faced additional hurdles such as demands for double or triple security deposits, requirements for co-signers with high incomes, and rental history requirements that ignored our current circumstances. DSS hasn't adjusted rental allowance to match Ithaca's sky-high housing costs, effectively trapping recipients in a cycle of housing instability. The gap between DSS allowance and the actual rent cost means we would need to somehow find thousands of additional dollars each month, a nearly impossible task when also trying to secure stable employment and meet basic needs. The disconnect between DSS's rental assistance and market reality reflects a border systematic failure. While Ithaca prides itself on being progressive and inclusive, its housing market tells us a different story. Last but surely not least, we're both grieving the loss of our parents. The pain of losing parents is devastating under any circumstance, but experiencing such profound loss while homeless adds layers of trauma that few can comprehend. For the both of us, grief is something else we are carrying along our already difficult journey. Jelani's lost the deep ache of losing both parents, leaving him without the fundamental support. Facing major decisions. Oh, I'm done. I'm getting cut off. Oh, that's it. That's all I got. That's it. I'm out of here. Because if I'm gonna get cut off of my shit, I'm out of here. Miss Phoebe, thank you.
She came prepared and very much
No, she
summarized
nailed
a
it,
lot of
man.
what-
She nailed it.
yeah,
I'm
a lot of what we
100%.
heard, was that.
Yeah, you're really rude, man.
Okay, so that very much summarized a lot of things we heard, and I will say one of the things that the Housing Justice Collective did was one of our members, Carolyn, thanks very much to her investigative skills. She was looking into, so who is the oversight of DSS? Because we keep hearing of all these constant problems. And it turns out that there is by law, New York state law and local law, supposed to be a citizens advisory commission for the Department of Social Services, which there isn't. And we looked into it and apparently there was some years ago. So one of the things that we had done is we went to the Tompkins County Legislator meeting and mentioned this, brought up this to them, and they admitted that they were supposed to have that. And didn't, and they're looking into how they can get that. I know it's gonna be very hard, but that is a lot of what we heard about the DSS, very well summarized by a very well prepared person. I don't know if we have any questions or Veronica, you want to say anything? No? Okay. Any other?
I just want to say that the young lady, Brianna Milton, who just did, is actively homeless right now. Who really needs, and we need you.
I'm in duress so bad, and I apologize for just coming at you the way I came at you. I am going through it really, really bad, and I was getting to the point to tell that I am actively homeless, and it's really hard, really, really, really hard because I'm not getting any help, and it's to the point that, sorry, that my relationship is on the rocks because my significant other is just so tired of going through this that he wants to give up on his life. So for me to have to deal with that is just traumatizing. It's absolutely traumatizing.
And so this here is just proof of why we need to continue to do the work that we're doing.
For
If
sure.
anybody out there is watching this, please let us know how we can help, but please let Rihanna know we need her.
Yeah.
We
I'm
need
here.
her.
I'm here for everything that you guys need me for, because I just am here to speak and tell my story and just advocate for other people and break the cycle, because it's not, we shouldn't have to have our children go through this. Shouldn't have to have anybody go through this. It's so disheartening. And I'm saying, like, my dad was like, I won't say a pillar in this community, but he's done things in this community. So for me to be treated the way that I've been treated is just really, really disheartening. And that's it. That's all I really have to say.
Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry.
Amen to that. Just one sentence. I've seen the inside of DSS because I've been there as a translator for people.
Awesome.
And what I can testify is, as soon as DSS sees that there's a witness next to the client,
It's a
they
different
treat the
ballgame.
client better. When it's a client without me as a witness, next person, previous person, they treat it worse.
Mhm.
And so DSS should always have an in-house witness.
An advocate of some sort, for sure.
For everybody.
We've heard that they
Yes.
don't like that, and when people bring in advocates, they
They don't
don't
like it.
want them
I
there, and they're very.
mean, I went as far as,
Even
I
if they
signed
don't even
paperwork
want
from Debbie Wilson, to speak on my
Oh, Deb
behalf.
Wilkes, yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
she's great.
Yeah, and it did. Stuff.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any other, I want to have them hear the whole group talking. Does anybody have anything else to add?
I just want to thank you so much for bringing this, and I think this should become, you said you have a web or
I have a blog
a
started, so
blog stuff.
what I was hoping to do with all this information is to get it out there somehow. And what I'd like to ask people to put in the comments for me is how we can do that. I have a blog on the Human Rights Commission website, but of course, we don't have a huge audience with that. And so if people have ideas or suggestions, should we write letters to the editor? Should we try to get newspaper articles out? Liddy Barger, that works with the Continuum of Care, had a good idea about making sure to post positive things, like on Facebook. You see all these negative things when people are downtown and they're worried. Post positive things. You went downtown to the Commons and it was beautiful and you had a great time, things like that. If other people have any other ideas, I would love to hear them. And yes, I was thinking to blog, to start getting the stories out there somehow. And I'd love to hear suggestions on how to do that. Because I think, like I said, not only is it just upsetting to have community members like that, but in a practical matter, we're not going to get people to support any kind of, funding or county or city support things that they're trying to build if people are still thinking of those comments that I showed earlier.
No, I think we really, I like this. I like if we can do something in person and invite people who are struggling, who have succeeded. We do our planning and thing, but some people can't, they don't have this access. If we can do something like this once a month right here, with your blogging, inviting people to know to come in, because they're gonna sit and have people that are willing to, then people in the community can see.
We need to
Here's
make our
success.
child
Go
bigger,
ahead.
to let the community know just how bad of a problem this
We
is.
need a voice.
I see a note from Cassandra that churches used to help house people and have warming stations, and that seems to have fallen, slipped out of use for some reason. Do you want to say anything more about that, Cass?
Sure. The only reason I know that is because my partner used to work for St. John's as well. And he was constantly having to transport people, and this was strictly in the winter, transport people to churches, hotels, and things like that. And I believe that hasn't happened, at least in the last 2 years, if not longer. I'm not sure what the reasoning is, if it's like I don't, the only thing I could think of is like the cleanup afterwards, maybe. Like that's the only thing I could think of off the top of my head. But and it wasn't just local churches either. It was out. I mean, I guess it was in Tompkins County, but still not just in the Ithaca area. You had to drive sometimes 20 minutes to the hotel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
A question in the chat is to all of you. Thanks for your perspectives. Other than housing, what are one or two things that would help you that you would like to be offered? Transportation, food, supplies. This is a question from someone in the
I
chat.
need the housing.
Nope, just housing. I don't
Just
want anything else.
The rest I get
I'll
on
go
my
hungry
own.
before anything. I need housing.
Yeah. Beth?
Yeah, I think with everything, one of the things we're lucky when it comes to Ithaca is especially the pantries, the hot food that is provided in various places around Ithaca. Transportation can be kind of hard unless it is medical based and you have Medicaid. But I agree with the rest of them. Housing, I think, is the part where we're lacking. We have a lot of resources in the other areas.
Also, may I add, there is also a lot of need when it comes to dealing with individuals that are suffering from mental health, and homelessness at the same time. From my experience, there is no real outcome when it comes to finding solutions for these folks to be able to get into assisted housing or further treatments. So yeah, and also with youth, that's also has been a small issue as well.
It's a bigger issue than you think, really.
I think that's the main questions. Any other comments from the group? You have one? I'll turn it.
I was just going to say, I don't know about the other churches, but we have a friend in the Presbyterian church here downtown. And he is still helping people with transportation, getting them to appointments, storing their stuff at the church.
Okay, thank you. I just think also to piggyback on a nest is that we need to figure out a way of not putting everybody in one place. There needs to be houses for people who are recovering. There need to be houses for people who are coming back from prison or jail. There need to be houses and more access for people who are suffering from mental illness so that they can get the care that they need. And for some reason, we wanna just put everybody in the same place, even people coming out of the, I hate they call it the jungle, but even people coming out the encampments don't even want to stay in some of them places where they put them because they say it's unsafe. So really looking at how do we build these different housing for people and what is going on with that place that they got up on the hill that was supposed to be the detox center.
They closed it down.
It was opened and then closed. That's what happened.
Yeah, there's no
They turned it all to strict mental health.
I
It's all
read
funding.
that it was a staffing problem. They couldn't get staff. That's
Funding.
what.
It's funding, yeah, you're right.
You know what's funny is I went there. I went to McPike and I was gonna go to the place over on Trip Hammer, and I went and did the intake and decided last minute, I had already spent 3 months in rehab. I think I'm okay for now. And 2 months later it was closed down. But they were willing to take me for what I think at least 3 months. So I thought, so what would have happened if I had if I had decided to stay? You know?
Cool. There's a number of comments offering you support that I'll tell you about later.
That's amazing. Thank you.
I'm good.
I'm
Okay.
good.
I think I'm
All right.
okay. I just
Thank you so much
appreciate
for
everyone for
In
speaking.
fact, just like to know from others, if this is something that people will be interested in us doing either monthly or quarterly. And we'll give Teresa another job, but if we could do this either monthly, maybe even quarterly, or maybe even every month, because this felt good to me.
And I will say, you can get in touch with me if you go to the Tompkins County Human Rights Commission
Right.
website. Our email is there, and there's also a space for you to write comments that will come to me. So that would be great. Thank you, Phoebe.
Thank you.
All right, I think we'll close then.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We are getting
Thank you.
comments, but she's do another one in the series, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's do
no,
another
that
one.
will stay, yeah.
This was great. I'm sorry for my little.
No, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, thanks very much, everyone, and I'll read through all the comments and we'll see how we can keep working on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thank you.
Take care, guys. Have a good one.